Kupo Mughals, it's the Schwantz27 here, and the second week of the Kefka Grand Prix Deluxe event has finished up, so let's recap all of the racing action with a look at the standings after yet another week and a preview of the track for next week's runs. This week's course was the Lete River Rally, with the most unique of the Kefka Unlock requirements of the tournament, with 8 characters and 8 espers, as well as the skip being 12 bosses plus the Lete River check, but only 2 of this week's 3 seeds had Terra readily available since she wasn't guaranteed at the onset like Health Bannon aka Strago. Since the no free progression flag was on, one could get some guaranteed stronger items from the free check pool to start their seed and not worry about increasing the already higher scaling at level 10 since we did start with a full party of 4. This also meant that the routing wasn't necessarily as important since there were only 2 checks in the game that would result in an item instead of an esper or character. However, finding 8 characters instead of 7 and having more checks at the beginning than usual with the extra 1 character meant that some seeds could go in wildly different directions. Let's see how the individual cart classes fared this week. The Chocobo class had Slots Lock, Celeste Swordtech, and Setzer Steel Natural Magic to round out our group of 4, and our free checks yielded a Valiant Knife for either Lock or Setzer if you didn't buy one in World of Ruin Thamasa in the Norse Weapon Shop, as well as a 5 Battle Curse Shield, but less interesting was a Flame Shield in Kolingen and a Force Armor in the South Figaro Prisoner Cell room. However, an Experience Egg for Celeste to level up her command ability, and an Illumina for Lock in the basement as loot to go along with a Minerva in the Narsh Shed meant that it was an easy jump start into the seed. Those that went to the Opera House Disruption for early levels ran into Chatternook for the boss, so this is when using that Pearl and Fire Rod that we looted would come in handy for Zone Seek, having a Strength +1 bonus along with the Life 3 spell. If you instead went to Burning House, you got Senor Behemoth for the Ragnarok Esper that taught Fire 3, Pearl, and Mute, all of which would have been handy for that particular fight, but having it going forward was still welcome. Characters, however, would be very sparse in our seed, as Daryl's Tomb, South Figaro Cave, Emmett's Rock all had espers, and although Blitz Mog could be obtained from Fanatic's Tower after grabbing a cat hood at the top, he had no characters behind him, at his only progression check being the Moogle defense. This meant that you had to go through either Magitech Factory or head into the Phoenix Cave, and Bubbaski decided on the 3-part check, which he called his shot here.
And Guardian's down. Alright. That's one of the beefier bosses, so I'm glad to get that out of the way. Not quite a Magimaster, but
Magimaster was at the 2nd spot, and it was difficult without an offering for the Valiant Knife, having to rely on Swordtech 1, Pummel, and Slots to deal non-elemental or defense ignoring damage. After finally getting through those 2 fights, getting 2 espers, French Vanilla number 24 and Air Force on the airship, which was appropriate, yielded Control Shadow. The Floating Continent had a battle against another tough boss, Doom, and then fighting Umaro to get Umaro, which checks out. 2 more espers on the Floating Continent meant a trip to World of Ruin Narsh, where a Ragnarok sword dropped from the Dirt Dragon, Kieran from Tritalk, and Dance Edgar at Umaro's Cave to round out the 8 character requirements. Poltergeist changed spots to Inferno, but we had Stop or Swordtech 6 to make this fight much less difficult. The rest of the Kefka Tower bosses were Tunnel Armor, Leader, Narapa, and Vargas, which was the only one that could be an issue with the Doomfist timer, and we had X-Zone, Mute, or Siren from the Floating Continent, and Life 3 gave us the tools to deal with Kefka, as Boo the Runner came in first with a 1:31:32 time, only 78 seconds ahead of the 2nd place finisher Bubbaski. In spite of the cornucopia of goodies early on in the seed, the extreme linearity and Magimaster in the Magitech Factory led to only 6 runners being able to finish, but those that did are treated to some decent standing points going forward. The Blackjack class started with Jump, X-Magic Gao, Lore Setzer, and another Rage Lock similar to last week, but this time he actually had some decent starting ones like Woolly, Brainpan, Box Set or Great Behemoth for Meteor, and Gylomantis for Shrapnel. The Narsh Weapon Shop had a choice between a Thunder Shield or a Snow Muffler, with most picking the Elemental Shield for spell access and a 10 Battle Curse Shield. The Kolingen Inn had an Atma weapon for later on in the seed, and if you wanted to increase progression, you were rewarded with a 16,000 GP Golem for Calmness Protection at Zen Thief Teaching Bolt 3, and some dried meats and shops for the Velt check, which gave Umaro. Heading through the Serpent Trench was another Esper before turning to South Figaro Cave where a Steel Realm was awaiting. Leaning into the Esper Mountain check immediately had fixed dice in a chest for Setzer to use and an off Vanilla Ultros 2 guarding Dance Terra. Realm's other check, Owzer's Mansion, had slots Edgar if you could get through Doomgaze's math problem, unlike Golden Shocker's first attempt here. Since we had a ton of characters at this point, Search the Skies was a decent option to get Siren, and the World of Ruin Narsh loop resulted in 2 Espers as well as fighting a Guardian at Tritalk for Tritalk, and Ramu at Umaro's Cave. A 9th character, Shadow, was behind the Welt check if you didn't go through Owzer's Mansion, and the rest of the Espers could be found at Daryl's Tomb, Kefka at Narsh after a non-shuffled boss fight, and the Lete River for that Kefka Tower skip. Had you instead gone to the Sealed Gate Cave for the free check, an Offering was in a chest for those fixed dice, and an Illumina was the reward at the end. Those that tried a more aggressive play with Burning House ran into 3 Stooges, and Magimaster could be found in yet another multi-part check on the Floating Continent. Vargas showed up in Kefka's Tower yet again with Cranes, Atma Weapon, and Air Force, and Final Kefka wasn't a huge issue, having Golem or Life 3 along with Siren and X-Zone. Some players had access to a Dragon Horn for Gao to use with a Stunner or Maneater, along with that Fixed Dice or Atma Weapon for Setzer to go with some big swords for our other characters. Golden Shocker took home first place in this one, beating the next nearest competitor by a whole 8.5 minutes, and the first spells of the event were cast with 1 free fits, giving 3 racers plus 30 seconds with slow 2, and Chadius stole 15 seconds off of Narvs, but none of them directly impacted the standings in this race. Only half of the 16 racers that finished the seed were rewarded points this week. The Falcon class also had Gao, but with lore and sketch, only being able to use Aqua Rake even with an increased number of starting lores. Tools Celeste with a drill and an inventory to go with a flash and air anchor that we picked up along the way in chests to go with X Magic Terra, so at least this seed was almost assured a Kefka Tower skip. Sealed Gate Cave had a Force Armor at the end, South Figaro had Valiant Knights for sale and in the basement as a reward, and those that splurged the 29,000 on the Tizen Thief Esper had Phantom, which was yet another Esper from the Shady Guy having Bolt 3 on it. This was yet another very linear seed with multiple paths that resulted in dead ends. Espers had both of Gao's checks, as well as enhancers for everyone in Nikea, Welk, Lete River, and at the first 2 checks of the Magitech Factory featuring a vanilla number 24, finally gave out Umaro at the end of the check. However, World of Ruin Narsh was bare of characters, with the dragon dropping yet another unusable Valiant Knife, except if you kept Umaro in the party over one of the other starting characters, and a Katana Soul monster in the box to rub salt in the wound. Mobliz had Mog, but you had to get through Doomgaze to just Bolt 3 and Flare, because even though there were tons of Espers laying around that we've accrued throughout the seed, they didn't have any other decent spells on them. I guess if you were high enough level at this point, you could use the Atma Weapon with that Offering that some runners looted during their trek. Mog's Moogle Defense was also not a character like in the Chocobo seed, so runners went back to the drawing board before digging Go-Go out of Zozo, try saying that 5 times fast, and Zone Eater had Shadow awaiting at the end, which really finally opened up the seed, but we were at 8 characters at that point. Unless Burning House had a character, this was the only way through the seed, but most runners had Esper Gold before they even got their 5th character, so no need to continue onwards. Luckily for Gar, who was one boss from Kefka Tower skip when he got his unlock, he ran into Hiding in the Sky, dropping the other dead check in the game, which was an Illumina for one of the 2 ladies in his party. Heavy reliance on Bolt 3 without any other good builds was good enough for Air Force and Tentacles, but not for Ifrichiva and Vargas, who was in all 3 Kefka Towers this week, with the Goddess spot, as this narrator found out to be annoying during his run with Claw and Doomfist, making the fight over in just 20 seconds. The Kefka fight itself, however, wasn't really ever a challenge with Life 3, Siren, and Air Anchor. However, the lack of any offensive punch made lots of Kefka climbs into the double-digit range in terms of minutes. Gar taking the 20 points this week, getting a 1:16:43 time. This was a super competitive seed with the racer in 7th place, falling just outside the point range, and this guy having only a 10-minute and 20-second gap between them and first. A look at the overall standings through 2 weeks have 3 runners surpassing the 30-point mark, with Falcon Hit still in the lead, getting first and second place respectively in the first couple of races in the Falcon Kart class. Golden Shocker's win in the Blackjack class catapults him into 4th, and the top 7 runners all have more than 20 points. A bit of a gap is developing, with 24 points as 6th and 7th place, with 16 as 8th place, so runners may have to start taking some more risks with attempting to score big in higher kart classes. However, as I found out this week, just a few small missteps may land you with a big fat 0. So, where will our runners be racing this upcoming week? It's the Serpent Trench run with the Kefka unlock at 7 characters, 10 espers, and a Kefka Tower skip with 12 bosses, as well as the Serpent Trench check. We start with Gao and 60,000 GP, which is enough to buy 12 items in this barter economy, with shops selling all items at 5,000 a pop. So once you exhaust those initial funds, it'll be a 2-for-1 trade. Shops are also a slightly higher chance at better stuff with 30% random, although we won't find experience eggs, elemental shields, super balls, breakable rods, or illuminas in there. We do get 5 Phoenix Downs and 3 warp stones to start, so there's at least saving us from not having to dig deep for those consumables. Characters do get a higher equipable item pool at original plus 60% versus the standard 33%, and if we happen to get a Rage Lock user for the 3rd week in a row, at least they'll get a list of 35 to 50 off the bat instead of 25 to 35. Since Gao is my favorite Final Fantasy VI Worlds Collide character and his checks are really great for starting off the seed, I'm expecting a lot of opening routes going through his 2 checks, especially with the Kefka Tower skip, contingent on completing the dive into the Serpent Trench. We'll see if some more spells pop off this week with an even higher MP pool that we've gained from the races in the 2nd week. I've been the Schwantz27. Until next time.